All right, awesome. Today we are live on SEO Leadership webinar, and I have been very excited to bring on Celeste González. Darius has met her before previously, and Celeste has been doing such amazing things. She works with Rickety Roo, and she is the director of the RuLabs section of Rickety Roo, which is the cutting edge SEO testing department, which is a tongue twister to say out loud. But yeah, she's been doing some really awesome things over at RuLabs and with Rickety Roo. So we're going to be talking about defining RuLabs' mission and how they structure SEO testing and their division, how they, analyze their challenges and their triumphs, and yeah, just the backstory into how RuLabs works and what Celeste does there. And if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the comments as well. We will love to chat about them as well. So without further ado, Celeste, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you keeping?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I'm doing pretty well. It's Friday, so it's always nice when the weekend's starting.
Friday's always a good day to have a webinar as well. Everyone's in good spirits. Celeste, I think I did a decent job at sort of summarizing Rickety Roo and RuLabs, but if you could tell us a little bit about your journey going into Rickety Roo and how RuLabs came about. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and just for the listeners to sort of gain an idea of what you do?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to land a job at Rickety Roo. Our owner and like my boss, Blake Denman, he has always wanted some sort of testing department. This was prior to me even working there. That was always RooLabs was always something that he kind of had on the back burners, kind of just waiting for that to start once we got to a place of growth to be able to do that. He had briefly mentioned it in a meeting with, the whole team. And I was like, whoa, I want to do that. Let me take over it. Let me just try it out. So it wasn't a full-fledged department for a little while. I did have to take my time in, getting the buy-in for testing from the clients that I did have, because I was also doing account management work and, just strategy at the time. So getting the buy-in from the current clients to be able to start running some tests, kind of working through it with him on, brainstorming, actually running the tests, reporting, trying to fine-tune that stuff before it became a fully fledged department at our team. And, I am the person for it. So if there is testing, I'm going in to talk to the account managers. I'm working with our SMEs. And then sometimes I'll get in on client calls just to, tell them like, hey, I had some proposals, like, nice to meet you. Let me just explain why I think you should do this testing and have it as part of your budget. So it was really nice that the concept kind of already existed. I got to be the person to help Blake realize that for the company.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about how you took that vision from wanting to start RuLabs to I think you've been there for now, well, with the director of RuLabs for 1.5 years almost. Tell us a little bit about how that sort of role has evolved and the department's evolved since its sort of inception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's been a lot of learning. It's been a really big learning experience, and getting to collaborate with people on the team, and then people, we're an agency, so there are clients that have other agencies for other things. They might have an agency for PPC, they might have an agency for social media. So it's a lot of communication and a lot of collaboration. That's kind of where my role sort of has developed so far, because before, being an account manager, I talk to my accounts, I work with the SMEs. It's kind of it now. It's like I'm kind of talking to everyone all the time. I might be talking to the content department one day, next day talking to SEO department, next day straight client calls. So it's been a lot of working with, each different person, understanding their needs, their wants, and trying to make something that works for everyone while also getting across my point on why we're proposing a certain test, why I think it's important for them to use, their time, their budget for it, but also really understanding, their needs and wants, so that way I can make sure on all ends of it, everyone's sort of happy with where it's going.
Awesome.
And Celeste, on that, whenever you're talking about testing, are you testing specific new strategies that might work, or is it more like different tools, or is it like a mixture of everything?
A little bit of a mixture. It's a lot of tactics, and then seeing what can push something a little further. So for us, one thing that when I was getting started with developing RuLabs as a department, I was really spending a lot of time researching user behavior and user experience and how that can impact SEO. And I was, researching articles from user experience people, like specialists versus just SEOs, because there weren't that many people talking about it at the time, and finding those tools like a Crazy Egg, Hotjar, Microsoft Clarity that have these metrics, and then trying to use them to help justify content changes. You can make sure that you write a good piece of content, answer all the questions there, but if people aren't actually scrolling around to read it, it's not that useful. So in kind of using a lot of user experience principles in our testing to make it a little more holistic and kind of get more of the buy-in from the client there, because it's easier to just be like, here's a session recording, and here are the heat maps data, here are, scroll depth. I can tell you right now, people are not reading the actual content on your website at this point. Like, they're not getting to that CTA. So it's sort of a holistic tactics for SEO.
Awesome. And like you said, you start from the account management side, so a lot of that is getting like buy-in from your clients anyway. How did you sort of use that to get buy-in for this sort of new service almost? Was there a few clients that jumped at it like immediately, or did it take a bit more sort of persuasion on the first to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, every client's different. It's just like every person is different. Thankfully, with the account management background, I had clients who trusted me already. I'd been their account manager for a couple years, so they're like, oh, we know Celeste, we know her work, we know that she's not proposing this just because she has a crazy idea here, like there's something there. So I was very fortunate to have clients who already had that trust with me because the relationship was there. The other ones where, they're a different account manager's account, it was more so a conversation with the account manager, and obviously they're my coworker, so they understand we can kind of spitball and work on things together, and they would give me more insights into their client, like, oh, I don't think this client will go for this right now, they might go for this though, or let's try to do something smaller for them to get the buy-in into something bigger. Okay. So yeah, it was, collaboration and just relationship building.
Love it.
Were there any instances over the past year and a half that you've, been doing this that, you sort of had buy-in and then something changed and kind of like threw off your entire plan that you had set forward? And how did you manage that? I think why I'm asking in particular is just like, if there are other people in your sort of similar situation that are trying to get sort of a department or a testing department up, are there things that they can look out for when, faced with these kinds of issues?
Yeah, we've had, I'd say there's like 2 clients I could think of off the top of my head where the buy-in was there, they wanted to get started with it, but then they're a huge team or they're a really big company. So it takes things a very long time to actually get more approval for, or we're just working with the SEO team for that company and they have to bring it to C-suite and, get all those approvals. So sometimes it can just take a really long time for things, and you may have to pivot. You can get buy-in from the SEO team that you're working with. It's like, their internal team, but then their separate C-suite might not want to go for it yet. So it is something to kind of always keep a backlog or like an idea bank. I'll create like idea banks to keep them there, and then try to, I mean, it honestly depends on what the idea is, but when it gets to the higher ups and it doesn't get approved, it's time to just go back to the drawing board and see, okay, these are the things that they said yes to before. These were those results that were driven from those things. If we can kind of come back to it, maybe at a later date in a different communication style approach, and bring in the proof that you may have from other tests that you've done for them or other tests that you've done for other clients, you can kind of work your way into sort of getting what you want.
Awesome. Sorry, I think Shreya is maybe disconnected.
Yeah, sorry, I got out. Yeah.
Is there like an off or like a non-obvious like data metric that you can sort of rely on when you're analyzing test results that maybe other SEOs overlook?
I'm very big into user behavior data, so I really always look at scroll depth. If I had to just narrow it down to one, sometimes you'll just see like the fold for the page, and then the actual scroll depth ends up being just where that fold is, so people aren't even scrolling on it at all. And in knowing how important that above the fold content is, and explaining that to clients, and how like this is the first thing users see when they land on the page, you've got to convince them to make it to the next page, scroll on the page, click on a button, whatever that is. So I'm showing them the scroll depth data on desktop and on mobile, showing them the differences between the two and how maybe things kind of have to tweak. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things that I look at.
Awesome. I love that. And out of curiosity on that, do you notice a difference between user behavior from users going on like an e-commerce site compared to like maybe like a SaaS site or a different sort of vertical?
I don't have any SaaS clients, so I can't speak to them. We do have some e-com, and then it's mainly all local. I will say that from the stuff that I've analyzed, e-com, they're on the actual like collection or like shopping pages are kind of a little more, I don't know, they stay on the page a little bit longer than sort of the service pages. Because, service pages for local, it's a lot of content, and people are like, okay, can you fix my plumbing? Yes or no. Yeah. Or e-com, if they're looking at a certain product, they do want to read the details of it, whatever it is, the size, if it will work for their device. So I have seen people stay on those pages longer.
Okay, interesting. That was just pure curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Sorry, I cut off, but I had a question. Just jumping back, I think a question or two back is, you were talking about ideas and how you'd have to go back to the drawing board and look at different ideas and things like that. And I really wanted to know, it's really easy to have a lot of ideas. So what key metrics do you kind of look at to determine what's a great idea worth putting in front of your clients versus what can be on the back burner to maybe like investigate at a later point in time? How does your team sort of determine and filter that process?
We're usually like an impact versus effort matrix there, and then also taking into consideration the client specifically and their risk aversion. If they are more willing to just be like, go ahead, do it, then it's more like, okay, we're going to try these test ideas that we have that are maybe going to take a lot more effort to get done, collaborating with like a dev to be able to implement changes, versus something very simple. If we have a client that's pretty risk averse, we're going to do something that's a little lower effort, so it's not taking away, too much time, too much effort, and we'll have a smaller impact, but something that they can see, and you can kind of get the wheels turning in their head, like, okay, I said yes to this little thing. The risk paid off. It's okay. I can build up and maybe do something that might seem a little more of an investment for us to like spend the time in getting these changes implemented. So yeah, taking into consideration the risk aversion of the client and the effort and impact that it will have.
Love that.
Perfect.
There's another question that was just popped up from you, Fraser. She asked, how do you report experiment results to stakeholders who care less about traffic metrics and more about business outcomes?
Yeah, so, GA4 tracking conversions and tracking, what's going on there. If you use a user behavior data tool, you can, like Microsoft Clarity, they have smart events, and you can also track button clicks. If they're clicking on an add to cart button, you can track that in there. They have like an integration with Shopify too, just specifically for e-commerce. And they have, like a different heat maps where you can sort of see conversion. They have a conversion heat map for e-commerce. Combining that data together, so you're not just looking at traffic and it's like, okay, we brought in these clicks. A lot of stakeholders are like, okay, thanks, that didn't bring me money, I don't care. So definitely always considering conversions, whatever that looks like for those pages that you're working on. Obviously, if you're working on, like, let's just say local service pages, you want to see phone calls, you want to see form submissions. Working on e-commerce site, you want to see add to cart. So yeah, always considering those as well. And I would say when proposing these tests, you definitely want to propose something that you would like to see conversions come in from, because it's a lot easier for clients to say yes to things in the future that are a little more experimental and in leading someone down the funnel to eventually buy versus, experimenting on landing pages where people are likely to pick up the phone, fill out the form, add to cart.
Love it. Celeste, out of curiosity again, I take it it's a slightly different skill set for a normal SEO to go into like more of the testing side of things. It's a slightly different job description. Is there anything when you're hiring internally for RuLabs that you look for within those sort of SEOs that is maybe slightly different than looking for somebody in just Rickety Roo?
Mm-hmm. I haven't hired anyone from my department yet, so this is just something I could think about, I guess, for the future. But honestly, creativity would be really huge for me if I were looking for someone now. I do think like having experience from other marketing disciplines would be huge, just because, the work that I'm doing now and in collaborating with other people's social teams, trying to get into that full funnel content marketing and in tracking as much as we can from there has been hugely important for clients. So yeah, trying to get someone who has experience in other marketing disciplines would be very helpful because they can have a different perspective to bring to the table.
Love it.
Awesome. I wanted to actually ask you, just from the scope of, I think you were an SEO strategist before moving into your next role. From like the perspective of an SEO strategist, for those that are listening, what were some of like the communication lessons that and soft skills that you had to learn and develop to, sort of sell and get that buy-in from clients, that you really prioritized and sort of had to master over moving from an SEO strategist into the role that you are now?
Yeah, I'd say number one is listening, no matter how novice or basic that sounds. I feel like a lot of times, most of the communication with clients is listening. I'd say more than 50% of it's listening. And then the other part of it is trying to, address whatever it is that they're communicating to you. If you listen to them enough, you're going to understand the type of language that they use so you can mirror and reflect that back to them. You're going to understand, sometimes you have some clients that are very knowledgeable in SEO and it's an easier sell because they kind of already know what you're working on. And it's like, oh, I can give you the same explanation I'd give a coworker. And you have other clients, small business owner, they're just like, I don't know, I'm just paying you, like, please tell me this is going to bring me leads. I don't know. So the level of attention and care there is going to be slightly different because you're going to need to get a lot more in depth with your explanations in the way that they understand things best. So, in really listening to those clients and in understanding their skills level with it also helps how you're going to communicate that back to them.
Love that.
Perfect. And when you're running tests, say one of them you start seeing good results from it, how often do you go back and test that before you present it to clients? Is it as soon as you see results the first time, or do you like try it with a few other clients first just to sort of validate it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to, like, obviously you'll have some sort of standard test that you'll run across clients. I do like to wait for the results to happen. And then what we do is I will come up with my report. I will try to consider all other factors that could have possibly contributed to the positive results. But I have really great team who will, send the report to, and I'll be like, okay, tear it apart. And I'll have Blake, or I'll have our VP of content and like AI. She'll also be like, actually, I would question this, or did you consider this that could have possibly affected your test? So having, your own team members who obviously they want to see you win, but having them dissect and tear it apart to make sure you can actually say that, the test caused these positive results, really huge, before taking that to a second client and sort of presenting it to them as, hey, we ran this test on a different client. They're in the same industry, different service area, or, your websites are similarly, but whatever it is, already having the no's in mind first, or the objections in mind, and in taking that into the conversation when you really do believe that you can scale the test across different clients is hugely important in trying to get that accepted and get that run on those other ones.
Awesome. And then from that, how much depends on then teaching the internal team about this new strategy or this new tactic that's worked, and how quickly they can get that implemented for like maybe the rest of their clients as well?
So I try to we have like our weekly meetings with the account managers. So I do try to talk to them pretty often. I also send out like a weekly update, like, hey, here are the tests that we're running, or here's some results that I've seen. And if they have questions, they'll be able to just Slack message me like, hey, I saw that you said that you saw this for this client. What do you think about applying it for my client? So we have our weekly account manager meetings where I can bring that stuff up. I have my weekly little post in Slack for it. And then monthly, I try to do one-on-ones to be like, hey, these are the new ideas that I have in the idea bank, because I do like to look at the data monthly and then just also look for inspiration anywhere else. I mean, a lot of test ideas come from client data and just what we're seeing happen there. But also, people can post their own tests on LinkedIn, or post their own tests on SEO blogs or news source. And it's like, okay, let's see if that's valid for one of our clients, or even our own Rickety Roo site. Let's test it on there and see what we find out, and, validate or reject, that didn't work for us.
Okay, love that.
I had this question lined up, which is RuLabs is defined by its quote-unquote cutting-edge SEO testing division. In the simplest terms, what sort of problems does a dedicated testing department solve for Rickety Roo and its clients versus the traditional SEO strategists? And I think the reason I sort of put this question in was also, moving into 2026, if teams are looking to sort of dedicate their own testing department, what would they sort of be looking for in their own team to maybe push for and vie for something like this?
Yeah. So I'd say that there are certain clients or, companies, accounts, they've had SEO for, an SEO team, agency, whatever, so many years. They've worked on it. They have their long-term strategy sort of set for them. And it's kind of like, well, what else can we do at this point? what is something else we can try. I'd say for a lot of those people who would just who are trying to work with those companies, it's important. Like, it would be really cool to have a testing department, because then you're able to, figure out what else could possibly be done for them. So those are some of, the clients that a testing department would like to see, because it's like, I'm just purely working on testing at that point. Like, they have a good long-term future-proof strategy in place. We can kind of work on these tactics and see. For other clients that are not necessarily in that spot, and they are still in the midst of working through their strategy, setting up their foundation, it's nice for them to be able to see what else is going on. If you are able to just have one testing client, and being able to provide proof for those of like, hey, this is what the future can look like. We get the foundational stuff set up first, and then we can start doing these really cool things. And for clients, business owners that are excited for something like that, it is nice for them to see something in the future. It's not just like, okay, I set up these pages, I'm done, bye. But they know that there's still always more work to be done, and that, it doesn't have to, tactics are good, tactics work. It's nice to be able to just see what's going to work for them.
Love that.
Really
and you mentioned
pressing
Celeste.
that SEO isn't dead. Saying moving forward, just keeping it alive in the department. Sorry, that's your thing.
No, I was saying, Celeste, you mentioned about an idea bank before as well. How often do you add to that? What's the sort of the ideation process? Because SEO is constantly changing. Like, do ideas sort of run out of date, if that makes sense, by the time another shift happens?
Yeah. So while I did bring up like tactics, because it is something like, okay, we're looking at this page, let's just say we're changing up the layout of it. Like, it is something that we would hope to be permanent and could then be something that we replicate across similar pages on the site, and then getting the buy-in to look at those other pages and, replicating, using that user behavior data to update that. So just using that as the specific example. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Could you repeat your question? I kind of just went off there.
Yeah, because SEO is changing, obviously, like if you have like a bank of ideas, do some of them get out of date by the time you get around to it because another shift's happened, or I don't know?
Yeah. So with that, the ideas that we have are supposed to, they're supposed to be for future proofing. Yeah, there are things that are changed. There are new tactics that come into place, and things that people suggest. Obviously, they're with AI search happening. There are people mentioning different things that they believe to be new tactics or that will be good for that. The idea behind testing, while it is like, okay, let's see if this will work, it is also not something from our Rickety Roo approach. It isn't anything that would harm, a website or, be spammy or anything bad in that way. So I like to look at everything monthly. I'll go through their data, but also staying educated, staying up to date on LinkedIn, reading Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, seeing what other people are sharing on Twitter or Blue Sky. Those ideas could just come in because I read something that week, and I'll go ahead and add it to the idea bank. But in terms of looking at their data, it's at least monthly. With those really big sites that have a lot of data, it's more often than that, just to see if there is any sort of trend analysis or patterns I can find that maybe we want to look deeper into.
Awesome. And just lastly, to follow up on that, so how long do you give an idea before, or like a tactic before you sort of not scrap it, but okay, this hasn't worked? Because obviously SEO can take a while, sometimes longer than others. So is there like a certain cutoff point where you're like, okay, we need to forget about this and try something else?
What if we've had a test that didn't have any results or didn't have great results? I will ask some other team members to take a look at it. And whether if it is just the account manager or if it is an SME who's, going to have great knowledge on that specifically, I will have someone take a second look and try to see if there's a way to alter the test versus completely scrapping it. And it's like, okay, is this something that, okay, this didn't work. What are all the factors that could be considered for the reason why it didn't work? Is there something on our end that we could alter for the test and, retest it, come back to the data in the next couple of weeks and see what happens there? So I do like to try for an alteration before completely scrapping.
Okay, no, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Can I steal one last question as well? I will be very quick about it, but I just wanted to know, appropriately that this is, we're chatting about testing and moving into the new year. I think you'd have some decent insight into any forecasts or anything that you see that may be working that you maybe want to pass on onto our listeners. Where should their sort of antennas be turning towards?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we kind of touched on it, but AI search, getting into the future. Obviously, everything is very new. It's still developing with that. So we're in a very exciting time where people are trying out new tactics. So I'd say considering multimodal search and an understanding how important, images and videos are for these things. And while we're SEOs, we're not, creating a TikTok video, creating the YouTube video. We might be adding it to, the website and making sure it's properly, it's in structured data, it's embedded correctly, it works for users to see it. So I'd say considering all other parts of the content funnel and in making sure that, in an AI overview, you could see a video there, you could see an image there. So making sure that that stuff is addressed, and in testing, embedding a TikTok video versus a YouTube video, you might want to see where on the page you're putting it. How does it affect user behavior? So really just considering the user first, but really looking at that multimodal search and with videos and images and, seeing what else can be done aside from the written content there, and in working with those teams that are getting that stuff done to sort of align content strategies.
Interesting. I love that. Awesome. Time really went by with this one. It was such an interesting chat, and it was so interesting listening to you chat as well. Thank you so much for the advice and the insight. It was very insightful, and I hope everyone that was listening as well enjoyed this. If you want to follow Celeste, her link will be somewhere around here. You can follow her on LinkedIn. And is there anywhere else, Celeste, that you maybe want to shout out before we end the live?
I'm on TikTok too, so you can see the videos there. I mean, I'm testing this out for myself too, so always be testing. Yeah, you can find me on TikTok. I'll give that.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll add the links onto this episode, and you can check her out. But yeah, hope everyone enjoys their weekend, and yeah, Celeste, you too. Thank you so much for joining, and we will chat soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers.